page that I would. And now I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I can get to, I tried to set up some tabs. And here we go. And I'm going to now I just threw some ideas together in a slideshow only to keep me remembering what I wanted to talk about. It's not anything fancy. And oh, now I guess if I click share, it works better. There we go. I always forget. I think I did that for another class. I recorded an entire lecture and I could see it. And as far as I was concerned, I was sharing it, but I think I forgot to push the final button that said share because they said it was just your desktop we saw the whole time. That's so frustrating. Anyway, so we are now in module 3. So we're about halfway through the course. And I hope you've enjoyed the material you have read so far. We are going to try to take that link of where we were thinking about maybe connecting to the schema that many of you already have with the science of teaching reading, since I'm sure you've all been immersed in it from the other courses that you've taken, and of course in your practice as teachers. So now we're going to try to focus a little bit more on reading comprehension, because that's what a lot of secondary teachers focus mainly on reading comprehension. They assume that students come to them being able to read. And we, of course, know that some of them read better than others and some of them don't read, which is why you're reading the book that I chose for us. So I'm going to ask you a little bit later, a little bit about that book and see what your thinking is so far. So let's see. One of the big things that I want to talk about in this particular model is learning theories, which very much cross over with theories about learning to read. Not all of them are exactly the same, but there is a correlation. And so I've tried to put some resources together as you start to create a table of these theories. And you're going to say, well, why do I need a table? I'm never going to put that in my classroom and I'm not going to use that. You're right. You're probably not going to post this table in your classroom and you're not going to use it for lesson planning. However, as literacy leaders, you need to be informed to understand the theories that inform the practices that we choose, that you might recommend, and that you're going to see going on. And it helps you to understand the research a little bit better as you continue to read more about reading instruction. So let's think about it for just a second. What is a theory? Any thoughts? Anybody understand? You can think about a theory in terms of life theories, religious theories, theories on other things, or what is a theory in terms of research and education? Have you thought about any of that before?
I haven't, but I feel like a theory is closely tied to what you believe.
Okay.
I feel like you kind of, in order to have a sound theory, you research more to be able to back your theory.
Mm-hmm. And so where anybody, feel free to chime in. And we may not know the answer, so I am not trying to put anybody on the spot by any means. I'm just opening up the conversation because I have no idea what you know, quite honestly. Where do you see theory? Have you, in any of your reading, maybe some in other courses, or maybe in your world, maybe in curriculum development, do you see theory ever brought into your world as educators?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Let's see. I don't know if it's a, I guess it is a theory. You know how they say when like with the vocabulary, the use of vocabulary before kids come to school, if they're being read books at home, their vocabulary is, way bigger than most kids who are not able to experience books being read to them prior to coming to school.
Okay. So that's based on somebody's theory. Over a lot of research, they finally came up with this theory, this proposition, this idea, this belief that if you read to kids before school in the emergent ages in preschool, they will have stronger vocabularies. And then a lot of research either proves that theory to be true, or you come up with another theory. Do you think that is there just one theory that's true, or can there be more than one theory to be true?
It could be more than one to be true.
Okay.
Just like I feel like, again, going back to STR and balanced literacy, I feel like the rhetoric is that we need to completely do away with balanced literacy. But from my standpoint and from my world, using balanced literacy worked. And by balanced literacy, I mean the reading workshop model, which is now, being condemned because of Lucy Calkins. But I feel like that's one thing that she got right. I feel like she got it right that we need to allow kids to choose books that interest them. But I feel like we need to kind of make it more focused, if that makes sense. Like make that time more focused for them, so it's not just a free for all, which is what I did in my classroom.
So you're talking from your experience. Because you've done it, you've tried it, it worked. So it was true for you, and you were using practices that were probably passed down to you, or that you learned, or the curriculum that you were provided with. And I mean, I would like to say I agree with everything that I've heard in this room so far, because one of the books, the text that it's a voluntary text, you don't have to read it, but I'm going to highly suggest one particular chapter. And it talks just about that. It talks a lot about the idea that our beliefs, what we believe about teaching, about literacy, about how children learn to read, is very much tied to our instruction, which is going to be tied to our theories about how children learn to read. So there is this very strong connection all the way around. And then, of course, those theories did develop over time through many different studies. And so you can either prove or you can disprove a theory. So I think that you'll find a lot of researchers are pushing back on this view that there's only one right way to teach reading, because I think that those people who have been in practice long enough recognize that there's no two children that are alike. And so therefore, each one of them needs to be taught very differently. I have two children, a boy and a girl. They're adults now, but my daughter was an avid reader as a child, and she picked it up, so to speak. Now they went to very good elementary schools, but I can remember that they had a very workshop, holistic type of environment, and it was a what do they call it? She was in one of the first classrooms where they looped, and so she had the same teacher for first and second grade. Now, when her brother, who's just a year younger, came into that system and was in that same looping system, but had a different teacher, and he wasn't picking it up quite as fast. And my only model was her. I just figured, well, this is how you teach reading, and she's doing great. And what's wrong with him? He's not picking it up very fast. And I remember talking to the teacher and saying, hey, you're going to have to help me, because he doesn't need to be behind. And they said, oh, he'll get it. And their words at the time was, it's all developmental and boys develop more slowly. And there were lots of things that they said, but I also noticed that they gave him much more explicit phonics-based instruction. He needed it, and he's thriving. He has a master's now, and he did really well. She didn't need it. And she still became a pretty good reader. So anyway, that's just to support some of the things we're saying. And I think that when you read about where theories come from and what they are, you'll find that people are going to talk about our work as teachers, and the practices that you see are going to be supported by many different theories. And you need to be aware of what they are so that you can spot it, you can see it, you can work through it, and be able to support your teachers, which is why we're doing the work that we are doing. The other thing that I want you to think about is this particular book, Lenses on Reading, An Introduction to Theories and Models I want you to pay attention to, if you are able to tap into some of these chapters, I want you to think about how the material is presented. There's a lot of examples of, they describe a theory, and then they give you examples of how it plays out in education, but then they also frame it in a vignette. If a vignette is like a picture of a student in a classroom. And so I'm going to actually read this one. I meant to open everything with this, but I get a little carried away sometimes. So here, I'm going to read you the opening vignette. It says, Sarah, a quiet, pretty 8-year-old, squirms uncomfortably in her chair, aware that all eyes are upon her. She stares at the words on the page, unable to utter a sound. At first, her classmates are courteous as they wait for her to respond. But then they grow impatient as her silence persists. The students themselves begin to squirm as they exchange knowing glances at each other. Here we go again, as they wait for Sarah to read. Mrs. Brown, the classroom teacher, grows uncomfortable too. Was she wrong to call on Sarah to read? Why hasn't this child been able to keep up with peers in reading? How can she, Mrs. Brown, help Sarah learn to read? So that's the opening vignette in this particular book. And I think that serves as a tool to help readers, all of us, learn about learning theory. And I encourage you to pay attention to some of those examples, because when you write your case study at the end of the term, I encourage you to write it and open it in terms of a vignette. You are working with a particular student. I ask you to create a profile, not just to report, this is a 7-year-old or a 12-year-old in such and such a grade. And, not just the facts, ma'am. The facts are in there, absolutely. But make it a story, make it a narrative, paint a picture of your student, paint a picture of this person that you met at the beginning, that you have come to know, and maybe how this person grows and who this person becomes in this time, or who doesn't respond. This person may be very resistant to some of the things that you do, because there's a lot of factors that influence how our children learn to read and how they progress. I often talk about a student that I had in 7th grade who challenged me like no other. I was working on my doctorate at this point, so I'd been teaching a while. And he gave me a run for my money. And his problem was writing. He was a gifted kid. He was identified as gifted. He was also identified as dyslexic already. And for the STAR test, he decided to tell me that we were doing the pre-test, just like we're supposed to do. And he absolutely refused to write. I watched, I monitored everybody as they were working to see what was going on, to observe their behaviors, see how they would respond to this. And he wouldn't do anything. And then finally, he just got really frustrated, and he wrote all over his paper, "This is stupid." And that was it. And I thought, oh boy, are we in trouble? Because you're not gonna make it through high school if this is the way things are progressing. So I contacted his mom, and long story short, he ended up staying with me after school voluntarily. Well, he was voluntold by his mother, but because his sister was at the elementary school next door, and he had time to kill, so he got to kill it in my classroom. So it took us months to get to know each other. I tried to feed him. I listened to his stories about his game. He was a gamer. He loved his computer games. And I came to learn that he wrote stories about his computer games at home, but he didn't do any of that stuff at school. And over time, and with partnership with his mom, because sometimes he wouldn't do his homework. So it was a good partnership, but he scored one of the highest scores on the writing STAR test. But I also got him accommodations to use a computer, because that's what he could do. He was very effective doing that. And that computers weren't in place for them at the time that he was taking this test. But it took so many different approaches, and it really challenged me to figure out how am I going to get through to crack this case? So I wish I had been doing a case study on him. He was an interesting kid. His name was Dana. That's all I remember. Dana, he was a boy. Anyway, I'm putting little smiley faces on my computer. I don't know how I did that, but there they go. All right. So the point that I wanted to make is in this book, and let me actually get out of the screen because I want to show you where it is in our library. Oh, back up, Slay. You should be seeing me toggle through some different screens. If you in D2L, I link how you can get this book, Lenses on Reading. When I tried the link today, it said I had tried it too many times and it wasn't working for me. So I said, okay, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I just opened the library website, which is also linked in there. And I just typed in Lenses on Reading. And when I did that, it pulled up the book. And this is also linked in D2L in that section where we have the syllabus and such. So what I wanted to let you know is that you can find the book in here and you can get to it by just going to eBook Central or online access, and it should pop up. Here you're going to see that it says your institution has access to 3 copies of this book. What that means is that 3 of you can read it at the same time. But I know there's 4 of us in the class. I own my own copy, so I will read this one. So you don't have to worry about me, but I didn't expect that all 4 of you would be online at the same time. You can download up to 46 pages without any problem. So you might find a chapter or something that you go, this is really cool, and you want to read it, or you like certain pages. You can highlight and you can take notes. So I'm hoping that this is still a very accessible book for you so that you don't have to pay the money for this, because I tried to keep you guys from spending unnecessarily. Unless you want to get a doctorate, you may not need this on your bookshelf as much as another book. So, although I like it, I think it's a very accessible text. So at any rate, here's what I thought might be useful. I don't expect that you're going to read this from cover to cover. I do highly encourage, but I did not assign. So of course it's your choice. I highly encourage you to read section 1, Introduction to Theories and Models. You can download the PDF or read it online just to do that. And let me see, I read it again today. How many pages was it? It wasn't too long. Maybe 15 pages. And it's easy reading. And I did a lot of underlining. It'll confirm some of the things we've talked about, but it'll also put it into a context that makes sense. I was wondering if anybody was going to say something like the zone of proximal development when you think about Vygotsky. That's or schema theory. We use those terms all the time, don't we? The simple view of reading is a term we have come to use all the time because that's now entered our vernacular. Well, those are things that I want you to be knowledgeable enough to be able to have a scholarly-like conversation with someone so that when you go into maybe your curriculum department or somebody that is going to push back and say, absolutely not, like I know, Taryn, you have views that might defy what you're being told to do. But if you can support your thinking and you have proof and evidence, then you're all the wiser, and hopefully you can convince someone. I faced that every day when I was a teacher. And to the point that eventually a principal called me to go to a district where she had moved because she would say, I need to know how you do this or what's going on, because she trusted me, but she also knew I knew my knowledge. So that's the purpose of all of this. So please, I highly encourage you to read the Introduction to Theories and Models. You'll find it interesting and useful and give you a context and a grounding in this work that we're doing right now. You don't really need to find out what was going on in 400 BC. So you read that if you think it's interesting, if you want to read about Aristotle and Plato and how they contributed to our learning. I think it's interesting, but you may or may not have time for that. You're going to want to know more about the constructivist lens because that's something that's very relevant to us. The developmental lenses is another one. As I told you, my son was told, well, it's all developmental, Mrs. Slay, it'll be okay. You've got affective lenses, and when we talk about how people, how their feelings impact and how they feel impacts. The social learning lenses are huge. We talk about social learning theories all the time. Cognitive processing, that's huge. That's where you're going to find your simple view of learning in there. And then I encourage you, if you don't read it carefully, at least peruse and focus on the last chapter, putting it all together, because I loved the way these authors took that one little Sarah, I think that was her name at the beginning in that vignette, and they brought her back into the story and kind of put all of these things and thought, okay, so who is Sarah and how do all of these different theories impact her, or how might they impact her? And I think if you look at this as an exemplar of using this from the perspective of a student, you can think about it, well, that's what I'm doing with my case study. I just happen to have 8 visits with this one child that I may or may not see all the time. The other thing you'll find useful is the index. So I actually did a little trial to see, there's the, let me go, here's the book. Let me back up. I think these were the tabs that were open. What I did was I went up to I'm in the book itself, and you can search within the book. And at first I went to type in the simple view of reading, because I thought, is that even in here? It was never a theory that I had read about until recent times. So I searched, and then it's going to give me a little bit of mention throughout all of these tables, all these different chapters. But you can go all the way down to the subject index, and then you'll see where those things are going to appear in different places. And I think I'm going to assume, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, that you all know how to use the search functions online to find information. So you might find that quicker when you're trying to get specific reading. Now, one of the things that caught my attention, because I used my book first, is that it sends me, I mean, I'm looking for the reference right now. It sent me to Gough, G-O-U-G-H. Where is he? Because he's the guy that came up with that. There it is. So it tells you it's associated with a similarity and association. It's also associationism. That's a perspective, lens, and the simple view, and it says see Gough's model. Well, when you go to Gough, and I searched that one, so I typed up Gough, and then it still sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but it did, oh, that's because it's an author. It sent me to, I was trying to see if I still had the page up. I don't. I moved it. Let me go backwards. Let's see what it does now. Because it basically, see, this is one of the larger ones. It's mentioned in several different places, but it's going to show up under the cognitive processing lens. So you will find, again, you can go down to subject, but you can use the subject index to help you ferret out what you need to be able to do, for this to make sense. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm reading and I run across a term or a phrase that I'm uncomfortable with, or I don't feel like I have a good handle on, I do a lot of searching and then come back to it, because we can. So that's why I recommended at the beginning of the course, under the section with all the books, that you use this book as a resource. Read chapter 1, look closely at chapter 10, and then use the rest of the book as a resource, because you may not have time to read it all thoroughly. And it's not as fun to read if you're not looking for something in particular. Okay, so I hope that will be useful. So any questions about the book so far? Here we go.
No, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as a no for now. You'll find me if you do. But here's the table that I ask you to complete. I give you several theories already. Behaviorism, B.F. Skinner. That one is maybe familiar to you already. The Simple View of Reading, something called New Criticism, that might be a little bit new to you. Transactional Theory, that's Rosenblatt. We have an entire strand in our TEKS based on transactional theory. When we talk about reading, making connections in our, I think it's strand 2 or 3. Anyway, that one is all based on transactional theory. You know, schema theory, you've heard of metacognition, you've probably heard of something like sociocultural. You may or may not have heard of the 4 resources model. I actually applied it in 7th grade when I was a graduate student, and have used it to inform some of my research on social justice. And then you've got the construction integration model. That's an interesting term. I haven't heard it that way. And the RAND model. So all of those are going to be found in this book if you search for them. But there's also in D2L, let's go. What happened to D2L? I had it open. Wrong one. These were old. Okay, here we go. In D2L, you will see you've got the Elliman article and the Pearson and Cervetti's chapter. I don't know why it says 015. It's the way it downloaded. That's a lot of chapters. Anyway, it's just this one chapter, and I think that if you read it in chunks, you'll be able to pull out some useful information to complete this table. And then I think you'll find some information and may take notes from some of these podcasts that when you listen to those as well. I added, and here's the book that I just mentioned. And then I added some things. I'm really taken by Tim Shanahan's blog and podcasting page. This will take you there if you've never heard of or seen that link. This is I think I tried to create it as a podcast so you could listen to it. But his work, it answers a lot of questions that teachers come to him with. And so he puts it in, sometimes he repeats it over the years because his research is that strong, but he frames it around what teachers are asking him. So you will find some of these things interesting. This isn't necessarily going to talk about your theory, but it'll give you some fuel for thought. And then to get deeper into this concept of comprehension, I did not assign a discussion board this time because this book is hefty enough. And so I wanted you to have more time to be able to think about the readings that we have and consume it in your own way, and then respond to the book as opposed to giving you too many tasks to do. I think you've got your study going on, your case study, you've got the book talk going on, and then you have this chapter going, the table that you're synthesizing. Do you hear children in the background, by the way? No, you don't hear them? Oh, good. They're in another room, and it sounds like to me that they're in this room. Those are my grandchildren, and they're not quiet beings. There's no such thing as quiet in this house. At any rate, so you might find some of these things interesting that I found, just to give you different ways of thinking about some problems that teachers face on an everyday basis. When I was in the classroom, summarizing and main idea were the hardest ones to beat on STAR. They were always the lowest scoring, and not just my school, but across the state. So I thought, well, let's see what he has to say about it. So I thought you might find those interesting. I listened to him while I was walking my dog. And so hopefully you'll find it easy to incorporate into your day. And then this article, I was looking for some things by Nell Duke because she is such a powerhouse in the world of reading comprehension. However, she focuses a lot on elementary children. And this is a course for the upper grades, except you guys, I think all of you are dealing with older readers in the elementary grades. So you're dealing with still elementary. So that work still might be relevant to you. And it gives you a good idea of how comprehension develops, and just gives you another context for reading it. And that's it. I mean, that's this is all just to build your background when you have time in your most abundant extra time that I know you all have. But some of us just love to read this stuff, so I want you to have it if that's you. It was me. But that's why I do what I do. I love this work. So we've got our literature circle going, comprehension theories, and the literature circles. I don't know, my planning might have been a little off, but I tried, it was too hard to get it to go module by module because this center part of the book is the thickest part. So I didn't want to overload anyone. So you'll be finishing up part 2 soon. I think everybody in this room has signed up for something, but if you see at the beginning of D2 in our announcements, I put a table to kind of synthesize who signed up for what so you can remind yourselves. Let's see if I can find it for you. Oh, I was going to show you, I didn't mean to show you that one because that has a student's name on it. That's rude. I was going to try to give you, I pulled it up somewhere.
I have a question.
Yes.
So for the table, when it says related research,
Yes.
what do we put there?
Let me give you an example. You would, like, for example, when I said behaviorism, behaviorism is associated with B.F. Skinner in the 1950s.
Okay.
So put the person that I told you that transactional theory is associated with Rosenblatt, Louise Rosenblatt. And her work actually comes out of 1930s. So you're going to put specifically who is associated with it. You're going to put Gough, the guy I just mentioned, Gough, in connection with the simple view of reading. Even though we don't go around quoting Gough, and we use that term, we throw it around everywhere. Somebody thunk it up, as I like to say, once upon a time. So find those people. When you think of sociocultural, hopefully you think of Vygotsky. But there's other people that have done a lot of research in terms of sociocultural. There's the 4 research sources model. I'm Turner and somebody or other. There's several people. There's 4 people that are associated with that. But you're also going to find other people who have done research related to these models or theories and in your reading. So what I highly use this as a note-taking system. While you're reading, capture it, jot it down. Then when you get ready to turn it in, you can clean it up and make sense out of it and, write it in narrative form so that it's something that doesn't look like you just took a bunch of random notes. But I also highly encourage you to hang on to this because when you do your you don't do qualifying, but you do exams at the end of your program. There's a name for them. I forgot the name. But you have a big test where you have to write these essays to certain questions. You want to be able to substantiate your work. And one of the things that we noticed across the tests was that people weren't citing their research. They didn't know why they knew stuff. They were just talking. You want to be able to show that you're knowledgeable and where your knowledge comes from. So a table like this will help you. You want to, comprehension's a big thing on that test because at the end of the day, we read to comprehend. So hopefully this is going to be useful and practical for you in your coming, as you move through the program as well. Okay. I was going to give you an example of something. I just saw it. Hold on, please. Please ask your question. I'm going to find it.
No, I was gonna ask if we could list multiple people or just one.
Yes.
Focus on one.
I had something open and I seem to have closed it. So I'm gonna, it's on another screen and you're not gonna see it unless I change screen. So give me a second. Forgive me for being. And I see a comment in the chat. I don't see those, so please don't be afraid to ask. Here's an example of one that was done by a student at a different time. So here's the theory, behaviorism. This person refers to Thorndike, Watson, Skinner, Gough, and Hillinger. So you can see that there's several people that came out of the literature that are associated with this theory. Okay, then this person goes on to describe what it looks like in practice and some key takeaways, things that in this case, it was what he learned. And in this case, he didn't have any questions about behaviorism, but he had questions about other things in other areas. So it becomes this kind of a long table. When I pulled this up, I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be better if you did this as a horizontal table? So feel free, if that works for you, to change the format. I'm okay with that. But does this give you an idea of what your table is going to end up looking like? It'll take time. So while you're reading, take notes. Annotate, jot, underline. I don't highlight. A professor taught me when I was in graduate school to only use a pencil. And to this day, that's all I use when I write, when I type, when I write, when I'm reading, because I can erase it because I change my mind. And two, because I don't know what I'm going to highlight, and I don't like my book being yellow or pink or whatever color. I may go back and highlight certain things when I'm researching. I highlight because I know exactly what I want to look for, and then I can categorize things in highlights. And I take a lot of notes all over my books, what I read. Does this help? Any questions on this? Okay, so I'm going to close the table because I do want, I got to change and go back to the other screen. Let's see what's in the chat. Oh, somebody's dog is barking too. That's okay.
That was me. You answered my question eventually, talking
Oh.
about module 3.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to the case study. And I think I forgot to take the word draft off once upon a time. Let me take that out of there. So when I created this case study, I tried to outline the things that I want you to be thinking about as you're developing it. A case study is a research study, by the way. I did not frame it in the classic sense of research, the way that you would do it if you were a doctoral student, or that I do it for my research, because I didn't anticipate that you had the background to do that. So you may deliver it in whatever way works best for you, but make it an interesting narrative that I ask you to identify your students. So please do not just go through these bullets and just answer the questions. I hate it when students do that. I'm going to just be really honest. Why? Because that's just answering a bunch of questions. I want you to write it in a narrative style that flows, that incorporates these prompts to help you think. I use them to help you think about things to include, rather than to be questions that you have to answer. Okay. So you're going to describe your student. I gave you an example of a situation that opened up that book. I thought was kind of interesting. You have to start somewhere. So that's why assessment is there. But this is not an assessment course. So I'm not training you in what assessments to use in your practice. You will already have some at your disposal, or I'm assuming that the teachers that you're getting your students from, they have data, because that's how they know there's something wrong. So use that, and that's perfectly okay. But you have to have a starting point, and then you have to decide what you're going to do. And when I sent out that video, the email asking, everybody responded, thank you very much. But I think that, and a lot of you, I think we're going on things that maybe interventions that were already in place, or things that you know to do in school because of the work that you do, and yay, bravo for you. But if you find something else in any of the readings that you have, or you have to do some research to go, okay, that's not working, I need something else, then please try something new. This book is full of strategy. So if you find something she can help you with, by all means do it. And let me finish my train of thought first. And then collect your data, be able to produce the data in the context of your case study, to be able, and if you have to attach artifacts. That's great. Too cute. Is this a lab? He has a lab face, or she has a lab.
She is Sharpay and Cocker Spaniel.
Oh, I'm off. Very, very cute. Very beautiful. Of course, you picked her up like she was, you didn't pick her up like she would be a lab. So, um, what a sweetie. So at any rate, capture the data as you're going. At the end of every one of your sessions, you might have some sort of an assessment to see how's it going? How are you growing? You decide how you want to monitor the progress. Of course, you've identified your plan, and you're going to monitor it. And then I added a few words, since you might have read this today, based on some of the work I was doing to prepare for today. I added the word findings. What did you learn? What did you find about intervention based upon the work you did with this student? You found that he or she grew or remained static or responded to certain strategies better than others. What did you do to get to know the student? What did all that work that you did, what did you learn? Those are your findings, okay? And this is your opportunity to reflect on that and be able to talk about it. Some people call this in technical research, in the work that I do, they call it, there's a section called findings, and it's very, it's dry. It's usually very dry. You don't have to do anything that's dry. Make it informative. Make this useful to you and interesting for all of us to read. And then the reflection is called the discussion. So now that I've done all this work, what have I learned? And what does this have to do? How does this tie into what the literature says? What is this? How does this tie into the theories? You're going to find from this book on the lenses on reading that theory is also the framework that people use to conduct research. So you might say, well, my work is founded in sociocultural theory because I believe that reading is a social experience and that children learn as social beings, and they learn by talking to each other. So therefore, my intervention is to do think, pair, share, for example. So that's how that theory is tied to the actual work that they did in the classroom. If you're going to do a simple view of reading, then why? What's the theory that says that that's what's important? You might have several different things going on. Try something on Monday, but then the next Monday you tried something different. So this is your opportunity to talk about it. And then you might say, but if I were to continue this work with this kid, this is what I would do, and I would adjust it even further. This is your opportunity to talk about that. So I added this bullet. If you already printed this, just know I added this bullet that says, describe the theoretical framework that supported the intervention plans and its effectiveness. I don't think I reflected later that I didn't even talk about theory in your case study. I assumed it should be there. So my fault. And then all of that might very well tie into your conclusions as you're summarizing. So these two probably fit together. And pretty much that's it. What questions do you have about this case study?
How should like the formatting be? Do you want it in you just want it written up in a Word document?
I do want a Word document, APA, if you cite the theory and you use like schema theory, you're going to put Vygotsky next to that. And so you do need to have those things embedded in your write-up. It's a narrative form. So it's a write-up, it's a report, double-spaced, APA style. Use a pseudonym. You can mask the identity of the student. We don't need to know that. Protect your kid. I'm thinking right now with you. I can give you a format of introduction, findings, etc. If you would like that, I can create that format for you. And then you fill in, you do all the narrative parts in there. And that would
I
be,
think that would be good.
okay.
Yes.
I'm happy to do that. These
Thank-
things fit into it. But I'll be glad to try to reformat it so that you can deliver it. You don't have to spend hours figuring out how to deliver it. The only thing that you won't have is what you will see in research that you might read for other courses is called the literature review. And that's where you go out and find out all kinds of other people that have researched. You're not researching a question in this case, you're simply researching an intervention, because that's why it's a case study, okay? You're researching what you're doing. It's an action research. So I'll get you a format and send that out. Okay. But these will be guiding points to help you get there. And because it's going to take time, I know. What can I answer in regards to this? Is this doable? Is it overwhelming?
It's a little overwhelming, but I mean, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it well, but
Okay.
it is a little bit overwhelming just because, you know, my profession or my job title is gifted specialist. So finding the time to be able to work with the student is kind of hard because I also pull enrichment groups. So I'm having to figure out where exactly I'm going to pull him. I would like to do more assessments with him. We've done a phonics screener so far, which was pretty eye-opening because he also has dyslexia. But I also would like to do a reading record with him just to see what his reading level is. I know we're kind of moving away from that, but I still want to have that data so I can make sure that when I go and pull things for him to read for our guided reading or our small group reading time, that it's not above his level. It's not too hard for him to read.
Well, and I encourage you to keep thinking about something you just mentioned. So much of the simple view of, the science of teaching reading is framed for small kids, for young kids, for developing readers. You're working with older readers. So you have to think, and I think something that I might ask you to reflect on at the end of the course is, so where do you stand on the science of reading, teaching reading in the context of older children? Because that might be different or not. You might say, Dr. Slay, this is the way it is, and this is what I saw, and this is what I found. So I'm the proponent that says there's more than one. I said it before, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one theory. There's more than one approach. There's more than one strategy. And you have to find what works for your kid. So that's what I'm hoping that you are going to get a taste of in this study. There's not a right or a wrong way to do it. The wrong way is not to do it. There's a lot of information in here, and I did that to try to give you some support. So you can tell me, simplify that and take all those words out and just give me bullet points and whatever I'm open to suggestion to make this useful for all of you. Can we turn our attention to this for just a second? What are your thoughts on this book so far?
I think it's a good book.
Yeah, I enjoy the book. It has lots of strategies and things in there that it's very useful. So it's not just a book like, oh, this is a book I purchased for class, but it's still something that I can use.
Is it easy? Is it accessible in terms of readability? Okay.
Yes.
All right. That was my hope. I did want it to be something that a professional would keep and not buy just for class. The lenses on reading, you would end up buying just for class, and the other one just for class. But although there's great stuff in it, you're probably not going to go back to it unless you keep studying. But this one, I hope you'll find useful. My worry was I go, oh my God, that's so thick. That's a lot of reading. So I'm trying to eliminate other things for you, unnecessary discussion posts. I mean, I think they're all necessary, but sometimes it's one more thing to do. And I want you to I want you to get into the stuff in your own, and I know you will, because you wouldn't be in this class if you weren't interested in doing that. So I trust you guys to do what you got to do. Let me go back to my PowerPoint because I lost my train of thought. I think that was it. I think that's everything I wanted to say. Yeah, oh, you're looking at my screen. Okay. So we talked about the vignettes and how the learning theories are impacting the work that we do, or that it will, and you're going to be thinking about that question in the context of your case study. I just pulled this chart because here are some of these are many different kinds of learning theories. Now, some of these are not on your, like andragogy. That's the theory of how adults learn. That was something I learned. I didn't know that until recently. So that's a whole, people are studying that now. So that could tie into our older readers, but not when they're 12.
Right.
But these are learning theories as opposed to reading learning theories or literacy learning theories. And you'll see some of them overlap and some of them do not. And we talked about the book and how you can get to it. And we talked about the case study and the literature circles. How are you finding the discussion, the format of doing the discussion on the Padlet? Is that a nuisance? Is it useful? What do you, go ahead.
For me, it's fine. I just follow Taryn. Like if she changes her color to purple, I'm like, okay, this is purple is gonna be part 2.
Okay.
If it's gonna be orange the next time, I'm gonna whoever posts first and change the color, then I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what it's gonna be.
Well, I love it. I love that you guys are self-organizing. I want this to be a class. That's why I wanted to meet tonight, because I needed to know you. I didn't know who I had in my room. And this is all about you. And there's 4 of us, makes it small. And I'm one of those learners with you. So you tell me how to tailor this in a way that answers any kind of deep questions you have, or to make this function around your busy schedules. So, and I will be sending out a survey. It's 3 questions. What do I keep doing? What do I stop doing? And what do I begin to do? I do it always midstream. And so if you have time, I would appreciate any feedback, because this is about.
And I do have a question about the case study.
Mm-hmm.
So the student that I chose happens to be a student that I service. I don't know if I can do that or not. My friend told me I couldn't do it, but I told her, well, with STAR coming up, they know that I have to pull the kid anyway for services. So they won't deny me in that area. So could it be a kid that I service, or does it just need to be a fresh kid that I've never seen
I
before?
think we need to make this practical. It needs to be an older reader more than anything. So if we're servicing an older reader, that's fine. I don't have a problem with you using a student that you already have access to.
Okay.
Because it's going to be more practical. When I did my reading master's and then my PhD at the same university, and I was a classroom teacher the whole time. And I had to do research, and it was my question. I said, when am I going to get to these people? How do I do it? I mean, it's only so many hours of the day, and it's not me. The kid can't live on my schedule. So sometimes I had to do it on my off period. Sometimes I had access if the child was able to stay after school. That you got to have parent cooperation for that. And older kids get involved in sports, and that's hard. I know. So
That's another reason I stuck with the 6th grader, because they can't play sports. So they're not busy after school, or they don't have to leave early, things like that.
Well, good thinking. All right. So each one of you do you have access to your kid? I mean, you sent me emails and it sounded like things were okay, and I know some of you are going to get deeper into it after spring break. But any conflicts that we should talk about, or anything I can help you with?
I think it should be fine. I have a 5th grade student. Like I said, I've already talked to his teacher and asked could I pull him. It's just finding time in that schedule. Because I know that he's absent a lot too.
Oh. Oh,
So
they're the ones, yeah.
yeah, so just finding a day that I know that he will be there and making sure that that time is targeted with he and I too.
Okay, all right. And I see last names. I've drawn a blank. Miss Hobelman.
Yes,
Bambi. It's Bambi,
Yes.
right? Yes, sorry. I had to process for a minute. How are you doing? You're very quiet. And that's okay. So I'm checking in on you. Sorry.
I'm good. So my student for the case study, I'm a classroom teacher. I teach 5th grade. So she's one that I'm already pulled for intervention.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be working with her with this, like her in a small group. Is that okay?
As long as you can document what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're documenting her specifically, but you're working in the context of a small group.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'll decide, does that work? Or do you need to do something more individual for her or whatever?
Okay.
You'll find out. You do need to make this work. And this is not meant to be busy work by any means. It's too much to be busy work. It's got to be useful, informative, and help with the goals for this particular class. So I hope you'll find that. All right. Well, thank you very much. We did that. Are you familiar with the term status of the class? Taryn might be. She probably is. She said something about Lucy Calkins. It goes back to her. Statuses of the class comes from my field is I taught middle school for a long time, so that's one of the reasons that I love this class. But also because my field is writing. That's what I did my dissertation on. That's what I came to realize that writing. So the next module is going to be really cool because that's all about writing and how it informs reading. And that was my question when I was a master's student. I wanted to know how writing can support reading comprehension. And because I think the saddest thing for me in the world is the fact that we don't teach writing anymore. Well,
No, it is a lost art. So at the beginning of the school year, because I'm also student council coordinator, which is a lot. So one of their tasks is that they have to write a paper. They have to write an essay proving why they would be a good member for student council. So I actually pull them and do a writing mini lesson with the kids who are trying to be in student council. So I schedule a time with teachers and I pull them and show them the art of writing.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to do it. Because all we're doing is teaching grammar skills and how to answer the question on a test. We're not teaching it in context.
Exactly. And that's an issue that, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion that we don't need to take time up for, but there is I will just say, we assign writing. We don't teach writing. Everybody's gonna say, oh yeah, we do writing. I go, yeah, you do writing. That's not teaching writing. When I was in a classroom with a student teacher this week, I did a walkthrough because that's what we do on, and one of them, it was on active engagement or something, and I didn't give her credit for it. And she goes, well, I had them turn and talk. And I said, oh, they were talking. I said, they were talking. They were absolutely talking. I said, but I was listening. I heard them talking. I said, were they talking productively? What were they talking about? Did you have a structure? And so we talked about all those things. And she was like, oh. She was okay once we talked about that. But the fact is, when you tell someone to do something, and I know I'm talking to the choir now, I'm sorry, but I think that this becomes a problem why things get co-opted, why things get convoluted, why Lucy Calkins' work got so bad-mouthed is that it was taken out of context. People don't truly understand her. They don't understand her units of study. They haven't read her work. And I remember that when I was, when her units of study first came out and I was observing some teachers in the classroom and we were talking about writing instruction and they said, oh yeah, we have this new thing, this Lucy Calkins thing. And I said, oh, that's so cool. Tell me more about it. How are you getting trained? They said, oh, well, we have the book and people just give us stuff, but
Yeah.
they just pick and choose what they want to do with it. Well, you just destroyed the integrity of the whole piece when people do that. And so your work as literacy leaders and coaches, or even if you're a classroom teacher, you're going to have to stand your ground and know what is good practice, because it's a shame, because her work is good. Now, she also has come to say, but I have some room for change and growth. She did not acknowledge the science.
does.
So
She does need to incorporate the science of reading, but like I said, the readers workshop model and
Mhm.
getting in the lesson and getting out of it, stop talking,
yeah,
show them how to do it, let them practice and let them go on and do it on independently. I think she got that right.
she did.
I think
So
she got it right.
the status of the class comes from some of that work. It comes from the work of Donald Graves. It comes from the work of, oh, I've lost her name, but she's the middle school one that I used to, I'm sorry. I will, when we get to writing, I'll bring you all these important names dealing with writing instruction. But, and I used to use a clipboard and just have a list of names and say, okay, so where are you in the writing process? Where are you in this project? Where are you in whatever it is we're trying to do, whatever your goal is? And I could do it by calling their names. I could do it by being in the room and just circulating. There's so many ways, but it was my way to honor their individual their progress, but me keep tabs and know what I need to do to be able to support them. So that's why I call the status of the class on two big things that we're doing in our course. So anyway, no check sheet. I got you on camera. Well, if you don't have any questions, I'm going to let you have dinner. Thank you so much for coming. You know how to find me. And anytime we need to talk, just let me know and we can arrange that. I'm happy to be here for you. Have a good spring break, y'all.
Okay.
you.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.